Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to carry out a major service on a BMW N55 engine. And following this DIY is going to save you a lot of money too, because if you sent your car to BMW for this major service, it'd cost you at least £500 or about $750. But if you buy all of these high quality service items and DIY it, then it'll cost you 200 quid only, so about $300. So you can see it's a massive saving, and no corners have been cut on any of these parts and materials that you can see behind me here. So let's quickly go through all of these goodies and I'll explain what I've got and why. So Mahle, Henst and another company called Mann are the OEM suppliers for filters to BMW. So this is an oil filter. This here is actually the cabin filter. And then normally you would have an air filter too, again from any one of those three brands. But my car's actually got a K&N performance panel filter, so here I've got a cleaning kit for that. Next up we've got the OEM spark plugs, and these are made by Bosch, and I'll talk about them more when we get to the spark plug fitting part. Technically wiper blades wouldn't be part of a major service, but by the time you get to that you're usually on about 40,000 miles and probably you're ready for a new set. This is a Febby Bilstein sump plug washer. You need a special socket for the spark plugs I mentioned earlier, so I'll come back to that in the spark plug section as well. And then finally that brings us to the oil. Now this oil meets BMW spec LL04, and any oil that meets that spec and it's by a well-known brand will do a really good job for you. And just to finish by saying that the BMW spec is actually 5W30, but a lot of owners on the forums find that the 5W40 works really well and it doesn't burn as readily because these engines are prone to burning a little bit of oil. So let's get started with the oil change and then we'll move on to the plugs. So I only need the car just a little bit higher so I can get to the sump plug, so I just drove it up onto these blocks. And then here you can see I'm just put the jack under, and that's just as an extra little safety precaution. And then although I'm on a level surface, I put the handbrake on and I left the car in gear. I've got a manual car, but if you have an auto then of course put it into park. Okay, so getting under the car now, at the very back of the engine under tray, it's actually further back than the wheels, there's a little hatch that you can open and that gives access to the oil pan drain plug. And so I just reach under with a little stubby screwdriver and undo that, and once you've turned it that way, then you can usually just pop this little cover open, and then just inside there, that's your drain plug. So I'm just going to get a container under here and loosen that off and get this oil drained down. Should be about 6.5 litres if it hasn't burnt too much. So this sump plug takes a 17mm socket. Just going to break that free and get this started draining down. There we go. While that oil's draining underneath, up here on top of the engine, this here is your housing for your oil filter. So I've just got a cloth that I'm going to keep handy, just in case we get a little bit of a leak or a few drips coming off of the old filter cartridge. And what I've got here are some oil filter pliers, and I suppose this was designed for the traditional metal oil filters, but it's perfect for doing these caps. This one's made by Hilker, it's quite a good bit of kit, and I'm just going to grab hold of this. That was on much tighter than the required 25 Newton meters. Up on top of this cap here it tells you the torque setting. This cap shouldn't have been on that tight. But anyway, like I said, the pliers have got the job done. And this will make the oil underneath start running faster now, because now air will be getting into the system. You can see this is the old filter cartridge. I'm just letting it drain a little bit. That'll drain out the bottom anyway, with the sump plug being out. And now we can take this to the bench. Okay, so just working on the bench here, this cartridge just pulls out. It can take a bit of persuading, as you saw just then, but it does just come out like that. Now we've got our new filter element here. So that's the filter itself. And then it comes with two O-rings in the packet. So if I just get that opened up, just a small O-ring here, and then a larger one too. Okay, so the small O-ring that we got in our filter set goes here, and so I tend to use like a little pick, and what you don't want to do is damage the plastic at all. So if by using a pick you can just kind of just get under the edge of that O-ring just a little bit and pull it out of there. And then we can just go ahead and pop on our new O-ring. So now we can move on to the larger O-ring. So you can see it just here on the housing. And this is a bit of a similar job, so I don't want to damage the plastic under the O-ring. So I'm just going to be careful to just drive this pick into the O-ring a little bit so that then I can lever it out. And now what I've got is just some brake cleaner, and I'm going to clean up those threads because the BMW service manual says those threads should be clean, and you should use the brake cleaner before you put the new O-ring on, because the brake cleaner is not good for the O-ring. So I'm going to put that well out of the way. Don't have to worry about the little one at the top because I won't be spraying near that. And I'm just going to spray and clean these threads and then just give them a wipe down. So I'm just going to put a little bit of oil onto this O-ring. So I've just got the fresh oil container open there, and I'm just going to, it only has to be a little bit. And now we can go ahead and pop this O-ring onto the housing, back where the old one was. And just make sure it's located into this recess correctly all the way around. Okay, so we're ready to put our new filter cartridge in. We've got all our O-rings in place, so it just pushes on from this top. And then just push it firmly and you'll feel it go fully home. And now we can just go ahead and pop that back in the housing again, so it just screws in. So there is like a special socket you can get for these, and then of course if you have a socket on you can use a torque wrench, but I don't have one of those, so I'm just going to use the same wrench I undid it with, and I'll just be mindful that the torque is only 25 Newton meters, so this doesn't have to be super tight. Okay, so that's just snug now, so that's tight enough, and of course I'll come and check this later once I'm running the engine. So I've just got my new sump plug washer here, and I'm just going to take off this old one, give it a little wipe, and then pop the new one on. I'm just going to pop that back in there. Okay, and I'm just going to give that a little wipe up. There we go. Now we're ready to torque that. Okay, and now I've just got my torque wrench set to 25 Newton meters. There we go. And now we're finished under here, so we can go ahead and close up that hatch. And then just spin this around. There we go, to hold that up. Okay, so now we need to put 6.5 litres of new clean engine oil in. So this is 4 litres here, and I just have a funnel to avoid making any mess, and I'm just going to get all of this poured in. And just coming in with another 2.5 litres from this bottle. It has like a little measuring thing down here, so when I get to 1.5 I know that I've done enough. You don't really have a dipstick on these cars like you used to have in the old days. There's like an electronic way of reading your oil level. So what you're best doing is just going to the full 6.5 litres, assuming it's correct, but then doing a double check on the electronic system once we've got this all in. Okay, so that's about got it, 1.5 litres left, and this will come in handy for topping up because like I say, these engines do use a little bit of oil, so we'll take that away. Okay, so with the oil change done, we're going to move on to the next bit, which is the cabin filter, or also known as a pollen filter. And you won't find it under the bonnet in most BMWs, including this one. It's actually inside the car on the passenger side, so let's jump in there and we'll have a look at that. So the cabin filter or pollen filter on a BMW F20 is under the glove box, and in fact it's under this panel here, and this panel's held up by two 10mm bolts, one on each side, and sometimes they're torque screws on certain models, I don't know why. So here's the first one on the left hand side, so just get a 10mm socket onto that and spin it out. And then just move to the other side as well. That one there. Okay. And now this panel just pulls down. So it's got clips. And you're best starting at one side and then just working your way over to the other side comes down pretty easily. Yeah, so here you can see that's the left-hand side one that we were popping loose, and that's the one on the right over there. Now we actually have to remove this panel completely in order to get access to the cabin filter, which is just up here. And you can see there's an electrical connector coming to this SIG lighter or 12-volt socket. So I just need to grab hold of it and pull up and wiggle. There we go. Now in the background here you can probably see that there's a little interior light which has an electrical connector on it. And what you can do is just start pulling this towards you gently, and that'll give you a little bit better access to get to this now. And then that just pulls out. Don't have to squeeze anything or anything like that. And we'll just remove this panel now out of the way. Now under here there's like a banana shaped cover, or a boomerang shaped is the best way I can describe it, and it's held up by a number of torque screws, so we just need to take that access cover off. So this is the banana shaped cover I was talking about, and these are T20 screws. So I'm just going to get in there and I'll start undoing those. That's one. Okay, that's two. That's three. You see this little tab here? You just need to push on it this way, which is towards you, just to make it stop grabbing the edge of the cover. There we go. And you can just let that hang down now. Now this is the cabin filter now that you can see here, the bottom of it. And you can see that it's been shaped to match this enclosure. But you just grab hold of it and then just pull it down. And this one's pretty filthy. Can you see inside all the louvers? So it looks like it probably hasn't been done before, and my car's on 60,000 miles. So it's worth just having a look at this filter so you can see that it's profiled in quite a lot. So when you're squeezing your new element in, you'll have to be prepared that you have to push it in quite firmly. And also it was shaped a little bit like that, so the new element, I'll just curve it a little bit before I start trying to install it. Okay, so this is the new cabin filter for our BMW F20, so I'm just going to grab it out of this box. And interestingly, it came with some instructions, so it actually shows you all the stuff I'm showing you in this video, but it's easier watching a video, right? So I'm just going to gently curve this just a little bit to get it ready, and then we'll see if we can stuff it up into that hole. Get it in at one side first. It wasn't too bad, quite cooperative really, can't complain at that. And then we just need to push this cover back up into place. It has these locating pegs all around the edges, so it should be possible to locate it quite easily. There we go, you heard that clip go in there, and that holds it up in place so you can get the screws in. So we just have our 3 torque screws to put back in. Okay, regarding putting it back, just note that there's a little tab at that side, and then if we just go to the other side, there's another one there. And these correspond to some tabs that are underneath here. So you can just see it at the back there. And then the other one's a little bit harder to see, but hopefully you can just see it here. So that's what I'm going to be lining up the cover back into when I lift it back in. So I'm just going to plug this these electrical connectors back in just while I have really good access. So that one goes in at the back, and then that one just pushes onto the cigarette lighter. And now I'm just going to lift it up onto those tabs that I showed you. Okay, so that's on. And now we just have to guide it onto those little clips. So one on the right, one in the middle, and one on the left. And you can see the slots that they go up into, so just make sure you line them up as you're pushing it up into place. Okay. So that might look like it's hanging down a little bit at the moment, but the bolts will pull that up. So this is the first of the 2 bolts. And then the second one just goes here. So it was definitely worth me replacing this cabin filter because you can see what a state it's in. And you can actually get a standard filter, and you can also get a carbon one as well, which is really good at cutting out exhaust emissions. So, and I'll put links in the description to both the standard version and the carbon one in part numbers. So check it out if you want to buy one. Okay, next up it's time for the spark plug change on the N55 engine. And before we get started, it's worth mentioning these spark plugs. So they're a little bit unusual on this engine. First of all, they're a very small diameter. So as you can see here, that's just a 14mm. And also, can you see this is like a bi-hex or a 12 point? So that's an unusual fitting, if you like, for on a spark plug. And that means you need a special socket to fit these. And you're unlikely just to have this in your kit. So as you can see, it's very thin walled. It's got this bi-hex or a 12 point type hex here. And also there's a little bit of a universal joint at one end. And that's because these spark plugs, when they go down the tube, they're actually just at a slight angle at the very bottom to the access. And so this universal joint makes it so that you can get a really good purchase onto those plugs. I'll put part numbers for these plugs and a link to one of these tools in the description below. Okay, so the first step in the N55 spark plug change is getting this engine cover out of the way. And these just pop into place. So you just go around the edges, pulling up gently, and then that'll just lift right out. Now the spark plugs are all under here, starting with number 1 and working their way back. And the last couple you can't see because of this foam soundproofing. So all you have to do is just carefully go along lifting this off. It's got little knobbles, fasteners that the engine cover was on, just poking through. Just take your time with it because it is possible to tear this foam and then it'll be untidy. Okay, so that's it. Put that off to one side as well. It's worth mentioning that on some cars with the N55 engine, this air filter pipe is at the back. So it comes over the back of the engine and the air box is somewhere here. And so you have to undo some Jubilee clips and a couple of other screws and lift out this section because it's actually running here above all the spark plugs, so it's in the way. But on this particular car, again UK spec, the air intake's here, it's not in the way, we can get straight on with the spark plugs. Okay, these are all your individual coil packs that go straight onto your spark plugs. And all we need to do now is disconnect each one of these. So I'm going to start with this first one here. You just lift it at the back edge, and then as you lift, it ejects the electrical connector. So you can see it just literally pushed it straight out there, so that's pretty easy. And now what you'll find is this little lever that you lifted up has this hole through, and that's just perfect for getting your finger through. And now you can just lift straight up, and then your coil pack will come out just like that. And what I'm going to do now is go ahead and do that plug, put the coil pack on and reconnect it again, and I'll methodically work in that way all the way down. So here's the special socket that I got specifically for doing this job, and I just have an adapter from 3/8 to 1/2 inch drive, so I'll pop that in. As I said before, it's a very special design, thin walled, 12 point with a little articulating joint, and that's because it's really hard to show you, but the spark plug is kind of like that, exaggerated. So you go down this way, but then the plug kinks at the bottom, so this just enables you to get onto it better. And then apart from that, I just have an extension that I'm going to use to give me the reach that I need. So just take your time to make sure that it's located really well down there, and then go ahead and use your ratchet to extract the plug. These plugs are really long, so they take a lot of unscrewing. Okay, so I've got the first of my replacement plugs ready to go. They come pre-gapped to the correct gap already. And make sure you don't use any anti-seize compound on the threads, because two reasons really. First one is that these come coated, and the second is that you have a torque setting on your box. So if I read that, it says 23 Newton meters. Any kind of compound that you put onto the threads means that you'll over torque, because the release agent acts as a lubricant. So yeah, that's what you do. You put them in dry just like this, and I recommend that you put them in by hand because it is actually quite easy to cross thread this. If you started driving this in with a ratchet straight away now, then potentially you could cause a problem. So putting in by hand gives you the feel, and it allows you to locate. And you start turning it and you'd feel quite quickly if there was a cross thread, which you wouldn't necessarily feel if you were using the ratchet right from the start. So I'm just going to get my torque wrench that I've set to 23 Newton meters, and that's all there is to it. That's the first one done. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the coil pack back, and just a couple of things to note really. Can you see this shape on the coil pack here? Well, there's actually a shape molded into the top of the cylinder head here, and you just need to line those up when you're putting the coil pack back in. So push it in and you should feel it locate onto the spark plug. There we go. You can literally feel that when you push in with your thumbs. And then here's the electrical connection. So just start to feed that on, and then this lever will start to go down to secure it, and it just snicks in place. So I'm going to go ahead and do number 2, 3 and 4 now in exactly the same way, and then we'll pick up the action again on number 5 and 6 because there's restricted access, so there's a few things to show you. Okay, so number 5 and 6 are underneath here, and you can see that these electrical connections are in the way. So what I'm going to do is just pop them free of this bracket, both of them. So they just pop out of there. And what you need to do now is just take this bracket free, and there's just a torque screw there. This is a T30. Just move this off to one side, and now you can move these wires. And this is number 5 here, which we now have access to. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that lever up, which disconnects the electrical connection. So go ahead and pull that coil pack out. And you might find you have to close this in order to get it out fully, and it just wriggles its way out. Now before I do number 5, I'm going to move on to number 6 because I actually have a little bit better access right now. So I'll do them number 6 and then number 5 when I'm putting the plugs back in. As you saw, I had to just pry with a screwdriver to get this last one out because it's just so difficult to reach. And this coil pack just barely comes out if you take your time with it, just like that. Oh, back's aching now. So I had to do a bit of a playing around with my socket set to find something that's just the right length to go down in there. So obviously this here is the special socket I bought. This is a little 3/8 extension. And then there's the converter to 1/2 inch drive, and then a little stubby 1/2 inch drive. And when I drop that down in there, it's just about perfect to start giving me a bit of a turn on that spark plug. But because the spark plug's quite long, as this starts to come out further and further, I might have to take the little stubby one off. So we'll see. Okay, so as you can see here, I have the new spark plug for number 5 and all sorts of different extensions I'm using that are giving me the length I need to get down into there. And sometimes you have to separate the different parts of the extension you're using in order to get it back out of the spark plug hole. Okay, so that's number 5 done. Number 6 is even harder to get to, but you can see we have this access here. So again, it's just imperative that you get the length of the extensions right. And you might find that you have to drop your little socket in first and then feed the other ones in afterwards. Push it back together again now. There you go, we've got it. So we just need to put that 6th one in. So just feeding that in. This is where the universal joint comes in handy as well, to be honest, because you can kind of feed that round and down. And then just get it started by hand, same as the others. this, I need to get that socket out now. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this coil pack back in. And then we have the electrical connection that just pushes on. The lever comes over the top to secure it. Now we can get number 5 coil pack in. And it goes in exactly the same way, and I left it to last because it gave me the access I needed for the number 6 coil pack. So we just have our bracket to put back in place. Okay, so we just have our foam to pop back in place. It has a couple of holes through it that pop onto the little studs that the engine cover goes onto. A couple on this side, a couple on the other side as well. But you start by feeding it back behind the bulkhead here. And to be honest, it can be a bit of a wrestling match trying to get the foam pushed down under the bulkhead at the back. But persevere and you'll get it. And we just finish off the spark plug change job by putting the engine cover back in place. Next up on the BMW major service is air filter location and replacement on the N55. Okay, so here's how you change the filter on the N55 engine. Actually, the filter box may be in a different location under here depending on what region you're in. So this is a UK car and this is where the box happens to be. You might have Torx type screws or you might have clips like this, but in any event usually there's 4 of them, so you can see 2 clips there. There's one down this side and there's one at the back. But before we do those, I'm going to disconnect this electrical connection here because when we lift that off we don't want to damage this. So there's just a little tab that you squeeze on it and then that comes out. And then like I say, there's 4 of these clips. So there's the 2 there, 1 at the back and 1 at this side here. Just underneath this actually. And now we can go ahead and lift that off. Now the filters on these cars are little panel filters, and you can see that this one's a K&N panel filter as opposed to one of the OEM suppliers. And to be honest, mine hasn't been in long, so it's not very dirty, so I'm not going to mess around with it. But I just wanted to show you guys how to replace it. So if you'd bought a replacement panel, then you would just go ahead and pop it in and it literally just drops in place, just like that. And then you just put your cover back down. You can feel it seat and locate, you know, give it a little wiggle around, but you can feel when it's in place properly. And then just go ahead and start putting these clips back on. And like I said, there's one down here and the one under this side. And then don't forget to pop the electrical connection back in. And that's all there is to that. It's quite an easy job. So the BMW electronic oil level check is done when the engine's warm, so sometimes you do have to run it for 3 or 4 minutes or go for a short drive. So I'm going to run the car now and then we'll have a look at it. And so this oil level check's going to be for cars with iDrive, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this controller, and you just twist it and then that makes things move on the screen. So what we're going to do is go ahead and go down to vehicle information and press OK. And now vehicle status, which it's already highlighted, so I'll press OK. And you can see here it's saying oil level measurement only when stationary and engine on. So maybe I shouldn't have stopped the car, so let's get that started back up. Alright, so it's saying oil level check OK. So we just say OK now. And as long as you meet all of those requirements, then you can go ahead and click OK again to start the measurement. And as long as the engine's running and it's up to temperature, it'll start to measure your oil level for you. And this can take several minutes, so I'm just going to speed the process along a little bit for you guys. Okay, and that's what we've been waiting for, that little bar on the right hand side. And as you can see, it's showing it's at the max, which is what we expected because we put 6.5 litres of oil in. But it's nice to get the confirmation. So we can go ahead and press the back button and exit back out of that now. So while we're in the car, we might as well do the oil reset. So it's a little bit hard to see, but there's a little black button down here. This is like your service reset button. And when you're on this screen here where it's showing temperature and range and things like that, so I just pressed it once then to clear the messages, but now I'm going to press and hold it for 4 or 5 seconds. So this is showing what resets are possible. The first one's brake fluid, but to toggle through them, you keep pressing the service button here just once. So you can see it's engine oil, resets possible. Vehicle check, reset not possible. Rear brake pads, front brake pads. So let's scroll back to the one that we want, which we know is the engine oil reset. So now press and hold this left hand button again, and it'll say perform reset. So now press and hold it one more time, and your reset is in progress. So there we go. That's the BMW oil reset completed. So if BMW did this major service for you, they would check some other things while they're at it. So let's check those things so that then we're being as thorough as they are. So the first one is the coolant level. So give the bottle a little wobble and you'll soon be able to see the level. You can see it's just above that ridge there. So that's good news. It means we've got plenty of coolant in it. If it was dropping much below this seam here, and in fact there's a little marker around the side, it's about an inch lower than that, then we'd be looking at topping that up a little bit. And I'll put a link in the description to some coolant that'd be suitable for this. So the other thing that they'd check would be your brake fluid level. So let's have a look at that. So we just do these a little half a turn along the back. These are 10mm plastic nuts. And then there's a little clip here at the front left. So if we lift on that, we can move this trim out of the way, and now we can see the brake fluid reservoir. So as you can see, there's a min right down here, and then there's a max here where that arrow's pointing. So we can just give our brake fluid a wobble. It can be a little bit hard to see. Oh, okay, hopefully you can just see. Just down in here, can you see the level when I wobble it? So anyway, it's about there, right about on the seam, which is about halfway, and so I think that's fine. And this car takes DOT4 fluid, so if you do need to top up, I'll put a link in the description to some suitable brake fluid. And of course I've got that video I mentioned earlier, so if you look down in the description you'll be able to see how to change your brake fluid and to bleed it and top it up and that sort of thing from that video. And the final thing to mention while we're in this area is this is your washer fluid. So I'm sure that everybody's topping this up from time to time in the winter anyway, but if you're wondering where it is, there it is. I just buy like a concentrate that I can mix at home to the right level for how cold my climate is, and just pour it in there. Okay, so that's all there is to it. That's how to carry out a BMW major service on BMW cars with the N55 engine. Now we can get back out there and keep enjoying our car, knowing that we're looking after it properly. And as they say, if you look after your car, it'll look after you. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, then please give me a thumbs up. And I've got lots more content coming out featuring this car with this engine. So if you want to see more, then please consider subscribing, and maybe I'll see you in the next video. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye for now.